All right, so you know you're here because you want to know what's going on. You want to get right to it.
Exactly.
So in this deep dive, we are looking at something really striking from this past weekend.
Okay.
The devastation from all those severe storms across the South and the Midwest, and then we're going to juxtapose that with what former President Trump was up to at the same time.
Interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah.
What was he doing?
Well, that's what we're going to find out.
Right.
Our source material for this is actually a transcript from a Ring of Fire YouTube video.
Okay. Ring of Fire.
And what we want to do today is just kind of lay out the sequence of events and understand how this particular source frames these powerful storms and Trump's actions.
Sound good.
So let's just jump right into it with the weather.
Right.
This transcript details some really intense weather events.
Yeah.
Multiple tornadoes ripping through communities in the middle of the country and into the South, widespread destruction.
Wow.
Entire towns just completely upended.
I mean, that's got to be terrifying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just the force of nature.
The force of nature and the aftermath.
Yeah.
And the human cost, too, is really substantial.
Yes.
This source says that at the time of recording, at least 40 deaths had already been confirmed.
Oh, my God.
And there was real concern that that number could rise.
It's tragic.
It's just tragic.
So many lives lost.
Yeah, and what's so striking is that while all of this is going on, the transcript points out that Donald Trump was playing golf.
Of course.
Now, the commentator in the video mentions that Trump plays golf a lot.
Right.
So in itself, maybe that's not super noteworthy.
Right. But it's the context always.
It's the context. It's always the context.
Yeah.
And in this case, he wasn't just, having a casual game with some buddies.
Yeah.
He was participating in a golf tournament.
Uh-huh.
The club championship, no less.
At his own resort, right?
At his own resort, Trump International Golf Club in Palm Beach, Florida.
That's something else.
So while all of this is happening, right, all this devastation, these communities are reeling from these tornadoes, the transcript highlights this Truth Social post from Trump.
Oh, boy.
And in it, he announces that he has won the golf club championship.
Oh, well.
And he describes it as a great honor and such fun.
Oh, man.
The source really hammers home the point. The timing of this is what's just so jarring, right?
Yeah.
Like, while people are actively seeking safety, dealing with loss, people have died.
Right.
And he's posting about how much fun he's having.
Jeez.
And I'll just read a little snippet of what he said because it really kind of captures the tone.
Okay.
I just won the golf club championship, probably my last, at Trump International Golf Club in Palm Beach County, Florida. Such a great honor. The awards dinner is tonight at the club. I want to thank the wonderful golf staff and all of the many fantastic golfers that participated in this event. Such fun. Oh boy, what a good day. I mean, God, I'm out here playing golf. I'm having fun, not have to worry about being president. Man, I won the tournament. We got a kick-ass party happening later.
So you've got people hiding in storm cellars' bathtubs, and he's, celebrating a golf victory.
Yeah, the commentator definitely emphasizes that contrast, right?
Right.
Like, here's the celebratory tone in the midst of just real tragedy for so many Americans.
Yeah, it definitely highlights these different realities that are happening at the same time.
It really does.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to how our, perceptions and our experiences can be so different depending on our, our own situation.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating how like a single moment captured in a social media post can take on such different meanings.
Totally.
Depending on what else is happening in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the commentary in the video goes a bit further than that.
Okay.
It actually brings up a pretty critical point about other factors that might have made the storm's impact even worse.
Like what?
Well, the transcript mentions reports of layoffs at NOAA.
NOAA.
That's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And these layoffs apparently happened at the beginning of the previous week.
So just days before.
Just days before these storms.
Wow.
And the commentator then starts to question whether these NOAA layoffs could have affected their ability to effectively monitor the weather and issue warnings about the storms.
That's a really interesting point.
It is, and it really makes you think about, staffing levels and expertise within these organizations that are supposed to, help us prepare for these kinds of things.
For sure. I mean, if you don't have the people there to, track the storms, issue the warnings,
Right.
potentially that could have, a real impact.
Yeah, and the commentator even speculates whether any of the people who were laid off might have been directly involved in, tracking this particular storm system.
Wow.
It's a pretty pointed question.
It is.
It raises this possibility that these decisions about, resources could have had, tragic consequences.
Right. And it's important to remember that this is all coming from the commentator in this video.
Of course.
They're raising this question about, government staffing and how it might affect disaster preparedness.
Exactly.
And I think it forces us to think about the bigger picture here.
For sure.
The role that NOAA plays.
Yeah.
And these types of agencies in keeping people safe.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot to consider.
It is. And what's interesting is the transcript then shifts to a later Truth Social post from Trump.
Okay.
Where he does address the storms. And in this post, he says that his administration, and I do want to point out he's no longer in office.
Right.
But he says his administration is actively monitoring the tornadoes and the storms.
Oh.
He does acknowledge the severity of the weather, the death toll at that point. He says 36 innocent lives have been lost.
Right.
He also mentions that the National Guard has been deployed to Arkbafa.
Okay.
And he pledges assistance from his administration to state and local officials who are, trying to help their communities recover.
Gotcha.
Here's the quote from that post. "We are actively monitoring the severe tornadoes and storms that have impacted many states across the South and Midwest. 36 innocent lives have been lost, and many more devastated. The National Guard has been deployed to Arkansas, and my administration is ready to assist state and local officials as they help their communities to try and recover from the damage. Please join Milani and me in praying for everyone impacted by these terrible storms."
So he does offer condolences?
He does, but the commentator in the video is very skeptical.
Really?
Yeah, they question the sincerity of this whole message. Particularly, the part about Melania and the praying.
Yeah, like it feels forced or something?
Right. The commentator really thinks that this is at odds with the earlier celebratory tone about the golf tournament.
Right.
And they also bring up something else pretty significant.
Okay.
They remind us that Trump has previously called for the complete abolishment of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Right. The agency that's supposed to help with disaster relief. So is the commentator basically saying that this is all just talk?
Kind of, yeah. They're pointing out what they see as a real lack of consistency here.
Right.
On one hand, he's called for getting rid of FEMA.
Right.
And then on the other hand, he's saying his administration is ready to assist. And the commentator is very concerned about, if FEMA was abolished, how would that affect the communities that are now facing this devastation?
Yeah, it's like, how do you square those two things?
Right.
That's a good point.
And then there's one last thing that the commentator brings up.
What's that?
They point out that the states that were hit by these storms are likely red states.
Okay.
And they say they wouldn't be surprised to see, MAGA hats amidst the wreckage.
So they're bringing in the political angle here.
They are. And they seem to be suggesting that, there's this disconnect between the political leanings of the people who are affected and Trump's initial response with the golf tournament and then his past statements about FEMA.
Okay, so they're kind of raising the question of, is there some sort of, political bias at play here?
Yeah, it's definitely food for thought.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we put all of this together, this source is really presenting us with a stark contrast.
Right.
Trump celebrating a personal victory while these really serious events are unfolding.
Yeah.
And then this later statement acknowledging the tragedy, offering help.
Right.
But that statement being viewed with a lot of suspicion.
Right, because of the past actions and the statements about FEMA.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the complexities of leadership, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly when you have these personal events happening alongside, national tragedies.
And it makes you think about how different people respond in those situations.
Absolutely.
What are the implications of those responses?
Yeah, and also how those past decisions might come back.
Yeah.
It might have an impact on how effectively you can respond to a current crisis.
For sure.
So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
It really is. It really makes you think about, the role of leaders, how they navigate these different realities and what those responses might tell us about them.
Yeah, and I think it also, begs the question of, what is the role of government agencies?
Right.
Like FEMA in these situations?
Right.
Do they have the support that they need?
Yeah.
To really be effective in helping communities prepare and recover from these types of events.
I think it really challenges us to consider, how much support is necessary for these agencies to really do their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It really has.
Thanks for joining me.
It's been a pleasure.
And for everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.